In the year 1656, a young man stood before the elders of Amsterdam's Jewish community. His name was Baruch Spinoza. He was quiet, polite, gentle, yet the words he spoke had shaken the foundations of faith itself. He said that God was not a king, nor a judge, nor a voice in the sky. He said that God was everything that exists. The elders trembled. They saw in him not faith, but fire. They excommunicated him, cutting him off from his family, his friends, his people. He was 23 years old. But that act of rejection became the beginning of a new kind of vision. A vision in which God and nature are one. Spinoza's God does not command or punish. He does not reward prayers or interfere in human lives. He simply is. Every particle of dust, every thought in the mind, every star in the sky, all are modes of one infinite reality. Spinoza called it Deus sive natura, God or nature. Not two, but one. Not creator and creation, but a single infinite substance expressing itself through everything that is. He was banned for this idea. But centuries later, Albert Einstein would call him the purest of philosophers and say, "I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the orderly harmony of what exists." Spinoza had discovered a God no temple could contain, a God of law, not lawgiver, a God of reason, not religion, and he would spend the rest of his life defining this divine unity, not through worship, but through geometry. Spinoza asked a question few dared to face. If God is infinite, how can he have a shape? If he has no limits, how could he stand apart from the world he created? The religions of his time spoke of a personal God, one who listens, judges, forgives, and punishes. But Spinoza found contradiction there. A perfect being, he reasoned, would have no passions, no moods, no desires. For passion implies change, and change implies imperfection. Thus, the God of Scripture, who burns with anger or feels jealousy, could not be the ultimate truth. For truth does not rage. It simply is. To Spinoza, God is not a person to be pleased, but the totality of existence to be understood. Every law of nature is a law of God. Every motion of the planets, every growth of a seed, every beat of a human heart, all are divine expressions following the same eternal logic. He wrote, "Whatever is in God, and nothing can be or be conceived without God." No creature stands outside the Creator, because there is no outside to infinity. When we see a storm or a sunrise, we see the face of the same God, not separate events, but different modes of one boundless substance. This was not atheism. It was, in truth, the deepest reverence ever spoken in the language of reason. Spinoza did not destroy God. He purified the idea of God from the smoke of superstition. To know God, he said, is not to beg or to fear, but to understand. And so his philosophy became a form of worship, the worship of clarity, of truth, of the silent harmony that pervades all being. He did not close his eyes to pray. He opened them wider. For centuries, men had spoken of God and nature as two realities, the creator and the created. One above, the other below. One eternal, the other passing. Spinoza erased that line. He said, "They are one and the same. Deus sive natura, God or nature." Not the nature of trees and rivers alone, but nature as the infinite system of all that exists, matter and mind, motion and rest, thought and extension, woven together in one eternal substance. He wrote, "There is no substance but God," meaning everything that is, stars, stones, souls, exists in God, not apart from Him. We are not visitors in creation, we are expressions of it. Like waves rising and falling on the same ocean, we appear, we vanish, but the sea remains forever itself. In Spinoza's world, God does not act through miracles. A miracle would break the harmony of divine law, and God, being perfect, has no need to interrupt Himself. Every event follows from His nature with the same necessity that triangles follow from geometry. He said, "From the necessity of the divine nature, infinite things follow in infinite ways. The rising of the sun, the birth of a thought, the orbit of a moon, all are movements of the same infinite essence." In this, Spinoza found a serenity few ever reach. He no longer looked for signs or wonders, for all things were already signs of God. To him, the true sacred was not hidden in temples or ceremonies. It was in the stillness of existence itself. Every atom was holy, every law was divine. And because God was everything, there could be no devil, no rebellion, no cosmic war. Only degrees of understanding, from ignorance to enlightenment. Those who see division see falsely. Those who see unity see God. To understand Spinoza, one must first surrender the illusion of separation. We think of things as independent: the stone, the tree, the mind, the body. But to him, these were not separate entities, only different modes of one infinite substance. A substance, he wrote, is that which exists in itself and is conceived through itself. It depends on nothing else, and there can be only one such being, for if there were two, each would limit the other, and the infinite cannot have boundaries. That one substance, he said, is God. Everything we see, touch, think, or imagine is a manifestation of that single divine reality. We are not things existing beside God, but within God, like ripples within water, temporary shapes of an endless whole. This is why Spinoza rejected dualism, the idea that mind and body are two substances. For him, they are the same reality viewed in two ways: thought and extension. When you think, that thought is a mode of God's attribute called thought. When you move, that motion is a mode of God's attribute called extension. But both are expressions of the same eternal essence. Thus, the universe is not a machine made by a distant craftsman. It is the living body of God. Every law of physics, every law of logic, these are not constraints imposed on creation, but the very heartbeat of the divine. To Spinoza, the cosmos was not a battlefield of chance, but an infinite geometry of being, each part necessary, each motion flowing from another with the calm precision of eternal reason. He did not seek meaning beyond the world. He found meaning in the world. And that made him one of the first philosophers to bridge the gap between faith and science, between the sacred and the real. For him, reality itself was the revelation. To see clearly was to pray. To understand was to love. Spinoza looked at human life with the same clarity he used to study the stars. He saw people speaking of freedom as if they were kings within themselves, able to will, to choose, to command their destiny. But he smiled gently at this idea. He wrote, "Men think themselves free because they are conscious of their actions, but ignorant of the causes by which they are determined. To him, freedom born of ignorance is no freedom at all. When a stone is thrown into the air, it might imagine that it flies by its own will, unaware of the hand that launched it, the wind that guides it, the gravity that calls it home. So too with man. Every thought, every desire, every act we perform arises from an infinite chain of causes stretching backward into eternity. We are links in the vast order of necessity, each of us expressing, in our own limited way, the nature of the divine. This realization frightened many. They saw it as fatalism, a denial of choice, a world of mechanical fate. But Spinoza saw something deeper. He saw that true freedom is not to escape necessity, but to understand it. When we grasp why we act, why we feel, why events unfold as they do, we no longer rage against the chain of cause and effect. We move in harmony with it. Freedom, he said, is the knowledge of necessity. The more clearly we see, the more freely we live. To the blind, the path feels forced. To the seeing, it is chosen, because they understand its nature. Thus, Spinoza redefined liberty. It is not the power to do whatever one wishes, but the power to act according to reason. When guided by passions, man is a slave. When guided by understanding, he participates in the divine order itself. The will, therefore, is not a sovereign throne. It is a window through which eternity passes. And when man learns to align his mind with that eternal current, he no longer suffers from what he cannot control. He becomes calm as the universe itself is calm. For Spinoza, the highest joy a human can feel is not found in wealth, pleasure, or fame, but in understanding. Every time the mind sees a truth clearly, it rises above confusion and fear, and in that clarity, it feels something divine. He called this feeling the intellectual love of God, amor Dei intellectualis. Unlike the love of religion, it is not born from hope or fear, not from expectation of reward, but from the direct perception that everything that exists is an expression of one infinite perfection. To know that is to love without limit. When you see a storm and no longer curse it, when you see death and no longer tremble, when you understand that all flows from one eternal necessity, you have touched what Spinoza called blessedness. He wrote, "The more we understand individual things, the more we understand God." Love, then, is not blind. It is the clear light of comprehension. And the more one understands, the more one loves. For to understand existence is to see God's face everywhere. This love cannot fade because it is not tied to time or emotion. It is eternal, for it rests upon what is eternal, truth itself. To Spinoza, knowledge was not cold, it was sacred. To think rightly was to pray. To understand clearly was to sing the eternal hymn of reason. And thus the philosopher became a mystic without miracles, a lover of God who worshipped through thought alone. Three centuries after Spinoza's death, Albert Einstein was asked if he believed in God. He answered, "I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the orderly harmony of what exists." For the scientist of relativity, as for the philosopher of Amsterdam, God was not a being who interfered, but the very structure of reality itself. This was the bridge Spinoza built between the language of faith and the logic of science. To study physics, to unveil the laws of nature, was, in his eyes, a sacred pursuit, the reading of divine scripture written in matter and motion. The rainbow, the atom, the law of gravity, none of these were accidents. They were the visible form of invisible reason. Every truth discovered by science, every harmony revealed by mathematics, was another window opened into the infinite mind of God. Thus, Spinoza was among the first to show that science is not the enemy of faith, but its purest expression. For to understand how things truly are is the greatest form of reverence, and to live in harmony with those laws is the deepest form of worship. He replaced prayer with perception, dogma with demonstration, and fear with awe. In his vision, God does not speak in words. He speaks in the language of truth. Spinoza saw that men are slaves not only to ignorance, but to their passions, fear, envy, anger, pride. We believe we act freely, but most of our choices are driven by emotion. The one who hates is not free. The one who fears is not free. The one who envies is bound by chains of his own making. He wrote, "Man is a part of nature and must follow the laws of nature." Our emotions too follow those laws. They are not sins or curses, they are effects arising from causes we rarely see. To conquer them, we must first understand them. Reason does not destroy emotion, it transforms it. Like fire brought under control, it becomes a light instead of a flame. The wise man, Spinoza said, is not the one who suppresses passion, but the one who sees its causes and no longer becomes its prisoner. Such a person is not moved by hatred or revenge, but by comprehension. He acts from the clarity of necessity, not the confusion of impulse. This is freedom of the mind, the power to live according to reason. He wrote, "The free man thinks of nothing less than of death, and his wisdom is a meditation not of death, but of life." The truly free man does not rage against the world. He cooperates with it. He acts as nature acts, calmly, steadily, with no illusions, no pride, no fear. Such a man is, in Spinoza's words, a citizen of the universe. To Spinoza, the human mind was not a ghost in a body, but a mode of God's attribute of thought. When we think, God is thinking through us. And though our body perishes, what we truly are does not end, because what we are is a mode of eternity. He said, "The human mind cannot be absolutely destroyed with the body, but there remains something which is eternal. That eternity is not a place or a time, it is a perspective. When the mind understands things sub specie eternitatis, under the aspect of eternity, it ceases to be bound by the passing moment. To see from eternity is to step outside of fear, loss, and death. You no longer say, 'This is mine,' or 'This is gone.' You say, 'This is part of the infinite.' In that vision, every sorrow becomes bearable, every joy becomes sacred, because everything is understood as necessary and therefore divine. For Spinoza, eternity is not waiting after life. It is here, now, whenever the mind understands the world clearly. To live in reason is to live in eternity. And to see eternity in a single moment is to become free from time itself." In the final years of his short life, Spinoza lived quietly, polishing lenses for microscopes. He had no wealth, no title, no followers. Yet through those lenses, he helped others see more clearly, a perfect symbol of his own life. He saw the world not as a battlefield between good and evil, but as a perfect whole, beyond praise, beyond blame. He wrote, "He who loves God cannot strive that God should love him in return. For love that expects reward is still bound by desire. The pure love of God, the intellectual love, is content simply to see." Spinoza found peace not in miracles but in understanding. He accepted reality completely, not as it should be, but as it is. And in that acceptance he found the highest joy. He saw that when we love with understanding, we align with the mind of God itself. We become for a moment what we truly are, a conscious part of the infinite. This was his message, that to live wisely is to live in harmony with necessity. To think clearly is to love purely, and to love purely is to know God. God is not far away. He is not an old man in the clouds. He is the substance of all things, the rhythm of all laws, the truth of all truths. He is not to be sought, but to be seen. And when the mind finally opens and all illusions fall away, there is only one realization left. God is everything, and everything is God. Spinoza was born in 1632 in Amsterdam to a family of Portuguese Jews who had fled the Inquisition. They came seeking freedom, but freedom has a price. When Spinoza began to question the literal teachings of the Torah, he was accused not of heresy alone, but of dangerous thinking. He did not fight back. He accepted his expulsion quietly, saying, "The more you struggle against passion, the more you are bound by it." He simply walked away from religion, from wealth, from the life expected of him, and began living in solitude, earning barely enough by polishing optical lenses. He lived modestly, almost invisibly, in rooms filled with dust, light, and silence. Those lenses he crafted were not only for telescopes or microscopes, they were a metaphor for his life's work, to polish the mind until it sees clearly. He never married, never sought fame. He refused a university position offered by powerful men in The Hague because it required him to swear allegiance to a creed. He said no, gently, firmly, and with complete serenity. When he died at 44, his lungs ruined by glass dust, he left behind only a few manuscripts, a few letters, and a circle of students who revered him in silence. But those manuscripts would later shake Europe. Leibniz, Descartes, Hegel, Einstein, all stood in his shadow. Even the romantic poets who celebrated emotion over reason could not escape his influence. They saw in him the first modern soul, a man who replaced belief with vision and fear with understanding. He was not a rebel for rebellion's sake. He was a peacemaker between God and the mind. In his masterpiece, Ethics, Spinoza built philosophy like architecture. Each idea supports the next. No leaps of faith, no appeal to miracles. He begins with definitions. What is substance? What is attribute? What is mode? From these, he builds the universe, logical, unbroken, divine. He proves, through pure reason, that God must exist, and that everything must exist in God. That nothing is evil by nature, only misunderstood. For him, the opposite of good is not evil, but ignorance. To know why something is to see its necessity, and to see necessity is to forgive. Thus his Ethics is not a cold book. It is a manual for peace, teaching how to overcome the storms of passion through clarity of mind. He writes, "Peace is not the absence of war, but a virtue born of strength of soul." Spinoza planted seeds that would later bloom in science, democracy, and humanism. He was among the first to say that freedom of thought is sacred, that religion should never rule politics, that no book, however holy, should stand above reason, and that love, not fear, is the true bond between man and God. The Enlightenment grew from his soil. Voltaire called him the most noble of atheists, though Spinoza was not an atheist at all, only one who believed that God was too great to be reduced to a person. The German philosopher Hegel once said, "To be a philosopher, one must first be a Spinozist." Einstein kept Spinoza's portrait in his study and often quoted his vision of divine order. In today's world of confusion and division, Spinoza's calm, rational spirituality feels almost prophetic. He reminds us that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the understanding of necessity. And that understanding is not cold. It is the highest form of love. They say Spinoza smiled often. Those who met him said his presence felt clear as daylight. He did not try to convert, convince or condemn. He simply lived the truth he saw, a life of thought, humility, and quiet joy. He believed that when one understands the universe, one cannot help but love it. That love is not emotional, it is luminous, a love that shines through all creation. When he died, one student wrote, "We have lost not only a great philosopher, but a saint of the mind." And so, my friend, Spinoza leaves us with no creed, no temple, no ceremony, only a way of seeing that the divine is not beyond us, but within us and around us, and identical with all that is. When you look at the world, its light, its order, its quiet necessity, you are looking at the face of God. He does not need our worship. He asks only that we understand. And in that understanding we find the peace Spinoza lived and died for, the peace of a mind transparent to infinity.